Hi, I'm Vicki Grant. I'm the author of almost 20 books for middle grade and young adult. And my books are, some of them are scary, some of them are mysteries, some of them are a bit sad. All of them, though, are either funny or have parts that are funny. So I'm here today to talk to you about writing funny. So I've got various tips and advice, things that I actually use when I'm writing. But before I get started on that, I want to tell you first about something that humor is not. The thing that humor is not is the same for everybody. And that's really important to remember when you start to write something funny. Not everyone is going to laugh at it, and that doesn't mean that it's not funny. It just means that it's not funny for them. So the best thing to keep in mind when you're writing something funny is that you're your best audience. You're writing something that's going to make you laugh, or your best friends laugh, or whatever. And don't worry about the other people if they don't find it funny. The other thing about humor not being the same for everybody, that means that there's no real formula. It's not like a recipe for a cake that if you follow to the letter, every time you're going to turn out with a perfect cake. It doesn't work like that. It's a process of trial and error and a little bit of luck. And so my tips are really just that. They're not rules, they're not laws, they're just some advice about what may or may not work for you. So anyways, let's get started. The first thing that kids often have trouble with is coming up with an idea. They want to write something funny, and then they've got a blank page in front of them, and suddenly they don't have anything in their head. And if that ever happens to you, one of the places I often start is with something that actually happened to me, or happened to my family, or something that I know about. So what I like to say is, write the truth, only better. The thing about humor is nobody's expecting you to tell them the story exactly as it happened. You can exaggerate, you can leave things out, you can add stuff that didn't happen. Your job is just to make it funny. Of course, if you do use a true story, you might want to change the names of the innocent to protect them, so don't go telling a story about your brother that would get him in trouble, let's say. So once you have your idea, the next thing you're going to do is make a mess. That's what I always say. It doesn't matter what type of writing you do, your first draft is going to be a mess. And you're kind of doing that on purpose. You're not going to be editing yourself. You want to blank out that voice in your head that says this is no good, or it's stupid, or it's not funny. You're just going to put down everything that comes into your head. And you're going to try and remember that there are no bad ideas. Or not really. Anyways, you're not going to worry about that. You're going to get it all down on paper. You're going to have some fun. It's very hard to write things that are funny if you're stressed out or if you're worried that you're not being funny. So you're going to try and relax, get it all down. Once it's down on the paper, you can put it aside, leave it for a while, and then you'll come back to it. You'll reread it. You'll edit it, you'll rewrite it, you'll read it out loud, you do a little more editing. I know maybe a few of you are hoping that you don't have to do a second draft, but writing funny is like any other type of writing. It's really about the rewriting. So you'll do that a few times. So after you've done that, if you find that it's still not working, I've got a few tips to bear in mind. So here are some problems that we often have when we're trying to write funny things. Sometimes we are too wordy. So this is a slide of me standing beside my 6'7" nephew, and as the slide says, be short. So be like me, be short. You want to write shorter paragraphs, shorter sentences. See if you cut out some words, it's actually funnier. Because one of the things about humor we know that surprise often makes us laugh. We probably all know people who tell a joke and they go on and on and on, and by the time they get to the punchline, everybody's figured it out. So to avoid that, be short, cut a few things out. The other thing you might want to do is study sitcoms. That's what I say, or study stand-up, study comics. If you turn on your favorite television show, favorite funny television show, and listen to how the actors deliver their lines. They don't just rattle straight through without pausing. Sometimes they say them really loud, sometimes they say them really soft, sometimes they stop in the middle of the sentence and look around and then end the sentence, and that's what gets the big laugh. And of course, when you're writing, you don't have a mic, you don't have an actor there doing it for you, so you have to figure out how to bring that rhythm into your writing. And the way you do that is through punctuation. So have you ever read a book and you see somebody is mad about something and the author has written the sentence like, "You will not do that," and they put a period after each sentence? That's the way the author has controlled the punctuation. And you can do that with humor too. So maybe put periods in weird places, or you've all seen the little ... dots. You can make a new paragraph. You can put things in italics if you want to show that the person really stresses that, the word. You can put it in bold. You can have exclamation points. Those are all ways to control the rhythm of the words on the page. And rhythm can be as important for humor as the actual sentences. So one of the tips I gave you was to be short. But actually, sometimes you want to be a little bit longer. And this is kind of connected to rhythm too. You probably have all heard the term suspense, and usually it's attached to a scary book or a mystery of some type. But we really need suspense in humor too. Sometimes you get the biggest laughs by building up to your punchline. Keep on putting it off, putting it off, putting it off. And that makes your audience more, you get more of an explosive laugh at the end of that if they know something's coming. So sometimes you want to slow down a scene too. And so I know it sounds like I'm giving you contradictory advice, but don't forget, I did start off by saying writing humor is a process of trial and error. So try it by taking a few words out. If that doesn't make the scene funnier, maybe the scene will be funnier to drag it out a bit more. Have another character come in and bring up the same subject again. And so that the audience kind of knows something's coming. They know that you're going to make them laugh, but you're going to make them wait for it. Sometimes, too, it comes down to the choice of words. Some words are just inherently funnier than other words. And I'm just going to read you a little clip here from a comedy writer from a long time ago who made a list of funny words. So he said, Alka-Seltzer is funny. You say Alka-Seltzer, you get a laugh. Words with K in them are funny. Casey Stengel, that's a funny name. Robert Taylor is not funny. Cupcake is funny. Tomato is not funny. Cookie is funny. Cucumber is funny. Car keys, Cleveland. Cleveland is funny. Maryland is not funny. Then there's chicken. Chicken is funny. Pickle is funny. Cab is funny. Cockroach is funny. Not if you get them, only if you say them. So I think you probably know that. Some words just sound funny to us. Others don't. And weirdly, to sum it up, it's words that are often have sort of hard sounds to them, are a bit, so the K's and the P's, and for whatever reason, we find those words generally funnier than other ones. So that might be just something at a very small level that you think of if you want to add a little humor to what you're working on. So another thing to think about when you're writing funny books is that it's not just about the jokes. It's one thing if you're writing a joke book, then you want to laugh a second. When you're writing a funny story, think of it more as a movie. So when you go to a movie, it's not just joke, 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 joke. You have to spend some time setting the scene, establishing the characters, having a story with a narrative that you're following along and that you're involved in. Too many jokes sometimes can kind of take away from your story. So try and think of it in terms of it being a movie, a movie for people's heads. And don't worry about having a paragraph or two or a page or two that's really just about setting the scene for the humor. The other thing to think about, I mentioned character development. And often we have funny dialogue. One of the things to bear in mind is that different people have different ways of speaking. You know that from your friends and from your teachers, from your parents. You want that to be reflected in your story as well. So when you're reading the dialogue back to yourself, think if it really sounds like one person in particular. If your dialogue could be said by any of your characters, maybe you should stop and take a look at that and think, how can I make this more particular to one of the characters? So the slide I have is of two characters from Winnie the Pooh, Eeyore and Pooh, and I think if you are familiar at all with those books, you'll know that something that sad sack old Eeyore says would be quite different from something that Winnie the Pooh says. Winnie is very cheery and kind of a positive character. So try and keep your characters' dialogue separate. And that will also mean that their humor will be more specific to them. I'm actually going to tell you a little family story now. I said at the beginning of this that if you're having trouble coming up with a story, often it's a good idea to start with something that happened to you or to your family. So I'm going to tell you a story that happened in my family. And I call this slide Cherchez le hot dog. So look for the hot dog, that's what it means. And you'll see a picture of my family here when we were kids. I'm the taller girl, and right beside me is a little boy. And that little boy is my brother, Gus. And once when when we were about that age, we were camping, and I had to take him to the outhouse while my parents were getting the tent set up. So I'm standing out, he goes into this smelly old outhouse in the middle of July. I'm standing outside waiting for my 3-year-old brother to come out, and he walks out a minute or two later eating a hot dog. He found a hot dog in the outhouse and he's eating it. And I like telling that story because for me, it's very much about the character of who this person is. So I think it's a funny story, but it's about him as opposed to my other brother that you'll see there or my sister. Only one of the people here could do it. And that's another thing about writing humor. You want the humor to be connected to the characters that you've developed. You want to think that only one person would do this. So much like if you're thinking of your friends, one of your friends might be goofier than the other one, more likely to do something like that. So those are all things that you can look at when you're writing your story. Does the action of the character fit who they are? And one last thing that I would say when you're writing humor, stand-up comics have a saying, and that is that you should only punch up. And that means if you're making fun of somebody, you should only make fun of somebody who's not going to be hurt by it, somebody kind of bigger and stronger than you. And that is doubly true when you're writing humor for people your age. You should never punch down. In other words, hit somebody when they're down, make fun of somebody, bully someone like that. And in fact, I would say don't punch at all. There are plenty of ways to be funny without being unkind. And often, one of the things I grew up with, I was told you only make fun of yourself, and maybe that's a place to start. So anyways, those are just a few of my tips for writing funny. I hope they're helpful, and keep laughing.